Hey everybody, and welcome back to Cutting Through. It's uh, it's been a really wet and cold and windy day in Bombay, which is a nice change. It's been pretty hot and humid the last couple of days. So, well, it's the monsoon, so what can you expect? But we've been talking a lot about different aspects of food and the restaurants and the hospitality and various issues we've been looking at. We've looked at regional foods as well, and one of the features of, well, not features I'd say, but one of the activities that one will have realized it has kind of grown during the pandemic is the rise of home caterers and home cooks and a lot more home delivery that is happening compared to before, and but not delivery from established restaurants or from hotels. That's just beginning to pick up. But what we're seeing is like a lot of new entrepreneurs enter the market, a lot of first-time players, people who don't necessarily have a lot of experience in the restaurant space or the food space, who are now joining in. And Ravi Wazir to talk about it. He's got a lot of experience in this field, and I think he's going to be just getting online in a second. Ah, there he is. Hey, Ravi,
Hi, hi Antoine.
how are you doing?
I'm good so far.
Okay. Okay, great. So, as I was saying, I've asked Ravi to kind of throw some light on the subject, and Ravi has a great deal of experience in the restaurant and the hospitality space, and also with FMCGs and advising companies on how to get their products out into the market. So he's worked with the Olive Group, with Swati Snacks, with Izumi, Tasty Tangles, RKHS, um, and various other places. And he's also run his own catering operations for quite some time. And for the last couple of years, he's been consulting with new entrepreneurs as well as with established players. So, Ravi, as I was pointing out when I went live, is that one of the things that we've noticed during the pandemic is the rise of the home entrepreneur, the home cook who's expanded um, their ambit, let's say, from just cooking for their family and friends, and turning it into something commercial, into something professional. So, looking at this kind of market, what do you advise someone who is either already started or who's planning to get into this space?
Okay, now that I could speak for a whole day, as you know, but since we have short of time, I'll say it briefly. So I'd say, however small a business one is starting, even if it's from home, you need to know that all the elements of business need to be sacrosanct. So, for instance, you need to understand the pulse of the consumer. It's very important that you know what consumer preferences are, what their needs and wants are. And while this might have been happening for generations across countries, whether it's in India, we speak about papad, pickle, or tiffins, or whether it's in the US, cookies or ice cream, or in Japan, I met someone who mentioned that they have people who cook bento boxes from home for their fellow neighbors, kids, and also do some miso. So I think you need to figure out what your consumer needs and wants are. That's the first thing. You need
But
to
how do you
align
do
them
that,
with what.
Ravi? I mean, that's very nice to
Yes.
say that you do. How do you actually do it,
So
especially when you don't know?
sure. So, say for instance, now it's public knowledge with, say, third-party aggregators through them that things like biryani is very popular. Things like pizza is very popular. That's in public domain. Apart from that, so you can choose whether you want to get into something which the customer already wants and how you would do that differently, because each person would cook biryani or pizza very differently. I mean, you can have a 100 rupee pizza and shoot to sell 100 pizzas a day, or you can have a 300 rupee pizza with all the gourmet stuff on it and choose to sell maybe just 30 or 40 a day. It depends on where you want to position yourself.
Right. Right. Well, one of the things that we do notice is that a lot of people are not looking at generic products. They are looking at something that they already have domain knowledge of. So largely, maybe it's some kind of a community kind of cuisine or a regional cuisine, which they specialize in, and which now they feel that they're ready to expand into a broader market. So in a scenario like that, where there is no information really, how do you decide to take the plunge?
So when I started, for instance, I said that what are my roots and what kind of food could I specialize in? And because my father was Kashmiri Pandit and my mom is Parsi, those are the cuisines I made. And back then it was Rashmi Uday Singh I wrote to saying that this is what I'm making. And she had the Good Food Guide in which she was actually tasting food herself and then putting up whatever she liked. So I
Okay.
actually sent across Rogan Josh and Dhansak to her back then. Regional cuisine was just about beginning back then, or at least I was exploring it. And she was very kind she gave some very kind reviews and sort of put my name up and some details in her Times Good Food Guide back then. So
Right.
regional cuisine isn't something that is new. I think people there's a wider audience that is willing and able to try it. Otherwise,
Right.
it was something which was very elusive. Few people had heard of, and people may not have it frequently enough. And that's of commercial importance that your customers have something frequently enough.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not commercially viable.
Well, that is a bit of a catch-22 then. I mean, you do regional and you do something that you're familiar with, but is there something, is it likely that someone is going to come back for a Kashmiri meal 7 times a week or 4 times a week? How do you get people back here?
So, there's this classic thought in any business, and especially the food business, that either you do something very common, where you know that people are likely to come in 7 days of the week, or then you do something which is not so common. So, the moment you make that choice, it comes with its own set of positives and negatives. So, if people don't eat Kashmiri food that often, then you need to reach a wider audience. And today, it's not just word of mouth or hoping that someone would write about me back then. It wasn't as organized in terms of, and there was no social media back then. And now you have all that. So then you need to focus on reaching out to 7 times more. If that person is going to have it just once a week or once a month, then 30 times more the number of people, so that you have that throughput. That's what I mean by having a business angle. Otherwise, I think you and I have enough friends with great culinary passion and no financial inclination, and money is the oxygen of any business. So passion
Right,
is
right,
important to sustain, because emotionally it takes a lot out of you, and passion is that fuel which can keep you going on like a turbocharge even when things are working against you. Very
hmm,
critical. But money is equally critical, because if you're burning too much every month and you're not earning enough, you don't really feel gratified. It depends on what
right,
you're in it. So you need to be clear and ask yourself, why am I getting into this business in the first place? What are my expectations of this business? So once you
right,
set your own expectations, it may be different from someone else. So my neighbor may be cooking for another reason and selling her food for another reason, and I may be doing that for a completely different reason. So I need
sure.
to sort of set my own expectations.
Right, right. So, I mean, I think Thomas from Bombay Canteen also agrees with you with saying that, go with it's great that you start out with your regional food and you go out with, something that you know and you understand well, because not too many people are doing that. And there is a sense of everyone doing like just the generic food, the biryanis or the dosas or the Chinese. So I think I'm in agreement with you on take up something that you know and you understand, And for me, one of the reasons to do that is is not simply that, coming back to your point of bringing people back to your food. I think when you know your cuisine, you are better able to expand the menu and to offer a lot more variety, which is unique and special.
I'd like to add to that, Antoine, where now this is purely from a business point of view, not just from a culinary domain expertise point of view, but you can always build your culinary expertise out of what you know already. So, for
Right.
example, if in the past couple of months I've experimented with, say, empanadas, or I've experimented with ice lollies, there may be a market for that, and I can develop my proficiency because there's enough online information, and there's enough good ingredients available where I can explore at home myself and build a competency which I didn't have. So I
Yeah.
don't have to limit myself as a home chef. I think today, it's not that you can say that no, this person is only restricted to regional Indian food. Then we wouldn't have had these wonderful culinary experts or entrepreneurs, chefpreneurs, whatever you want to call them, who have non-Indian food. There's so many people who've learned Western food or Oriental food, and they've taught that to themselves, or they've gone and trained. And now you have
Hmm.
access to online training as well. I don't only mean YouTube. I mean actual paid for programs from culinary institutes internationally, which can be done online. I know Ben and Jerry's, for example, the original owners of Ben and Jerry actually went to the Penn State University in Pennsylvania and
Right.
did a program there on ice cream making, and they
Okay.
became brilliant. So one can never underestimate the power of learning these days, and not
Sure.
limit oneself to what you're born to in terms of your culinary roots, or what you know in terms of your experience, and you can build that competence.
Okay, that's a great idea. I think over there, where start with what you know, but feel free to kind of develop your skills. Feel free to kind of learn more, and the opportunities to learn now are much easier. And whether it's free or paid. But so let's say that you've already established your culinary competency, and that's something that you want to tick off and say that's done. What's the next thing that you need to start looking at once you're ready to kind of get out there?
So
Is
once you
hygiene something in
yeah.
this context something that's really important?
So I'll come to that. Before you actually go live and before you reach the stage of hygiene, there are a couple of more things that you need to do once you've decided broadly that this is your menu. These are broadly this is the product category or the dishes that you're trying to do, and then you work on trying to identify
Is that you, Ravi?
what kind of equipment you would require. So once you have a certain kind of item, so say for example in ice lollies you
Ravi,
might
something buzzing at your
require
end.
a mold. In empanadas you might require an oven. So do
Sorry,
you
Ravi,
have?
something buzzing at your end. Oh, okay. Yeah, there was
Did
something.
you lose my? Did you lose what I was saying during that time?
Yeah, there was something buzzing at your end. We couldn't pick up on anything. Yeah,
Sorry.
could you just repeat? Yeah, could you just repeat yourself, because there was a huge buzz right through.
Uh, so your voice is not very clear. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Sorry. Yeah.
1 second, I'll just try. Can you hear me, Antoine?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, I'll continue, though I can't hear you very clearly. So besides the equipment, you need to see other infrastructure in your home. What kind of space you have? Do you need to make more space for that? You need to then think about your vendors, your suppliers of the raw materials, where you will get that from. Will they give you better rates right in the beginning, or only once you build a certain volume for them? Will they give you better rates? You need to check about permissions, whether it's from the society. You require a no objection if you require that, or whether you require, say, in your country or your city, what kind of licensing you require. So, for example, now in India, we require an FSSAI registration, not a license, but a registration for a home business. Once you reach a certain scale, I think more than a certain scale per annum in revenue, then you apply for a license from home as well. And then you can always transition to another place. But hygiene is absolutely a given. I'm so glad you brought it up, because people assume that home food is going to be cleaner than restaurant food or anywhere outside. And that's not necessarily the case. I think each of us become sort of victims of our own habits. And if we don't clean as we go, as we learn in professional institutes, sometimes a simple thing like a cloth, you get the smell of a dirty cloth in food, because whether it's a professional chef or a home chef, I find this mistake very often, that they wash the utensil, which they've taken out from the rack, and then they use a cloth which they think is clean to clean that, and actually they've made it more smelly, something like that. So, there are these little hygiene habits which we need to very consciously take care of. That's what I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you hear me, Antoine?
Yeah, I can hear you, but there was some kind of buzzing, so I don't know.
Your voice is very soft.
Yeah, I think you need to put earphones. There may be a problem with your. Okay. Yeah, so I was saying that once you figure these things out, how do you kind of figure out pricing? What is that something? How do you kind of figure out pricing?
So yes, pricing is something which there are two main ways in which pricing is decided, and this would be true of any menu at any restaurant or a dish at any hotel or anything like that. So first is on the basis of food cost, and the second is on the basis of the market acceptability. So when I say on the basis of food cost, I mean if you're selling something at 100 rupees and you say that the rule of thumb in a restaurant, for example, is that my food cost should be 25%. So if my
25.
food costs me 25 rupees and 100 rupees, then I multiply by 4, and 100 is what I'm going to sell it at. But I cannot think like that in isolation, because the customer may not accept that. So, for instance, how we do it in restaurants, and how I would suggest that you do this pricing at home as well, is look at two things in the market. One is what a customer would accept as value. So, for instance, again, I'll take the example of a restaurant, but you'll get my drift. So, if I try to apply that formula for a bottle of water in a restaurant, and I say I multiply by 4 times, a customer may say, no, I don't accept this. It's too high. Whereas if I do something like jumbo prawns, something which has great perceived value, then I might not only multiply by 4 times, I might multiply by 5 times. So I cannot have necessarily a fixed sort of food cost for every dish. That is something which will have to evolve. You have to listen to your customer. So that's the second part of it, based on customer perception. If I say, these are my dishes, and all of them hypothetically are costing me 25 rupees, and I'm going to sell them all at 100 rupees, then you go through it with the next filter, which is the customer acceptance filter, where you say that, yes, this dish can sell at 100, but the second dish can't sell at 100. It's going to sell at much less because the customer won't accept it. The third dish may sell at more than 100. And only when you actually go live with that will you get a sense of the customer acceptance or rejection or whatever response there is. So
Right, right.
so that's something which would happen along the way.
Okay, so this is a little tricky though, in terms of understanding how you put it out, because let's say you're doing going back to Kashmiri food. I mean, it's not available in the city. There are very few people who would be able to supply it. So there is a certain premium that is attached to it. Uh, but you don't exactly know how much people are willing to pay. And how do you start out with that? Is there a formula? Is there any kind of rule of thumb, apart from the multiply by four?
Uh, yes. Yeah, so like I told you, the formula is, you can multiply by 4, or you say that I don't want to sell at 100. I want to be really competitive, and it's costing me 25, and I want to, I'm not sure whether people will buy it at 100. So I'm going to be really competitive, and I'm going to sell it at 75. I'm going to be really, really competitive. I just want people to buy it. And my other costs, in addition to my food costs, because I've hired maybe my domestic help to clean up. I've hired my personal cook to support me in it, and I've hired one or two other helpers. And the total cost is going to be so much approximately. So I'm going to charge twice, not 4 times, but twice of what it cost me. And I'm satisfied with a very tiny margin because I want to make an entry into the margin, to the marketplace. In addition to that, you can also look at, there will be other regional Indian players, and you can buy food from them or have a look at what their portion size is and get a sense of other home chefs because they've
Hmm.
already probably been in the market for some time and tried and tested. It doesn't matter
Right.
whether it's Bengali food or food from Odisha or wherever it is, but you have a sense of what the exploratory or the experimentative customer is willing to pay a home chef approximately for. And then, which part of the country it is doesn't matter very much.
Okay, I think
That'll give you
that's a
some
great
kind of
idea.
benchmark.
That's a great idea because then it also gives you a sense of portion size, of how much people are willing to spend for a certain amount of food as well. But moving on, coming to the point of which you raised about sending food to someone like Rashmi, and maybe if you knew me at that point, you probably would have sent me also some food. But getting the word out there, connecting with influencers and all that. How important is that?
Absolutely. I'd say that, one of the most important things to do is find a place in the hearts and palates of your consumer. For some people, that may be through the route of social media. And they may say that I'm going to spend a certain amount of time and money in social media. And for me, that is the ultimate. Because that seems to be the language that most people are speaking nowadays. And it may be true to an extent. However, the other part of it is also that if I have a few people who are loyalists, where I really focus on research and developing my product. I focus on consumer feedback from the few customers that might be there. I focus on improving myself and sharing some free samples with them, for example. That, in my opinion, is more powerful than social media and more powerful than anything in the past or the future ever can be. Because word of mouth has been a proven way to say that, even today, if you
Hmm.
notice, say, eateries across the world, there are many eateries across the world which have crossed 50 years, 100 years of life. Whether they are operated out of homes or operated out of commercial premises, the way they have survived, and many of them are not on social media. They have survived the test of time, and social media has come recently. Sure, it's powerful. Sure, food bloggers are of help, food critics and writers are of influence. But those people have invested in listening to their customer, adapting to their needs and wants, and constantly focusing on that and just eliminating all the noise outside. Everything else is noise. So you can choose. It's a very personal choice whether you want to embrace social media and say we must move with the times, and that's also progressive. But at a different level, one can also recognize that you can anchor yourself in something which 50-year-old, 100-year-old brands across the globe have eateries, have survived without any social media, and till date, many of them are not on social media. That's the power of reputation. That's the power of goodwill. That's the power of investing in listening to and adapting to your customers' needs and wants.
Okay, that's a fair point. But how do you actually get to be known? I mean, once you've expanded beyond your circle of family and friends, is Zomato or Swiggy the right place for you to be? And this also ties up with the issue of delivery, because how are you actually going to get out there? At the moment, Zomato and Swiggy are the biggest. The online space is the biggest way to connect. Of course, there are people who are not on Zomato and Swiggy, but only use social media to connect directly with customers. But then there's also the question of delivery. So how do you tie in these two elements?
Third-party aggregators are people. Sorry, you were saying?
No.
Okay. So third-party aggregators are people who are a bridge between an eatery and a customer. And over the time that third-party aggregators, not just in our country, but in every country, have recognized that the price of doing business with them is not very viable. Not only is not very viable, but sometimes bleeds the owner of the eatery to an extent that they are getting sales, but those sales have come at a cost which is not justifiable to the business, and in the long run doesn't work. I think we've seen whether it's the US raising objections, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's India, associations of various kinds of eateries have raised objections.
Ravi, sorry to interrupt over here, but you're talking about established eateries and their problem with third party, which I completely agree with you. But when it's a new player, there are advantages to third party aggregators.
Okay, if you want a straight answer, I'll give you a straight answer. No, if I had to make a choice, I would say I will do it the hard way, but I will do it the profitable way. And the hard way is, if I'm restarting, or if I have a friend who's starting in this business, I will say, if you try to feel that by paying a certain amount of money to a third-party operator, you're going to suddenly get visibility, and that is your way of doing it, I would rather say that don't club the two, that is delivery and marketing. I would say split up the two. delivery and marketing, because the two together as a package come at a very expensive price. I used to deliver on my motorcycle myself. I'm not suggesting that everyone does that now. There are delivery only people, companies who are more economical than these aggregators, and their focus is only delivery, not marketing and delivery. They usually work out more financially viable. I would use those delivery only people. Two, in terms of marketing, I would try to use my own, not just word of mouth and network, but my own social media if I need to, and resist the urge to work with a third party aggregator for marketing, specifically not only because it's too expensive a price to pay, but it is, they own your customers. Very often what is happening with other establishments, other eateries, is that customers begin to know that third party app, and they go to that third party app, and they forget that brand of that eatery which they've been going to for so long. And then suddenly COVID has brought about this thing that, oh, let me reach out to that person, let me reach out to this person, and suddenly you discover that a lot of these eateries, and I'm talking about home-based eateries. In fact, just yesterday we ordered from Hill Road in Bandra, and we were reminded of this person because they weren't on these online apps anymore. It's
Right.
just so that's the choice that they made. So I'm rediscovering people like that, and would I go back to a third party aggregator afterwards? I am not so sure. Many eateries realize that we must know our customers. To serve our customers, we must know them, and we
Okay.
cannot have a third party aggregator tell us that, okay, we will share with you the name of the customer and the broad location, but not the details. I want to know my customer, and I want to balance the cost. So knowing my customer, I cannot outsource it to somebody. I will never outsource it to somebody.
Okay.
If I have a choice, I will never outsource it to somebody. I need to know my customer. I need to learn from my customer, and only then can I serve better than the rest of the people. So let everybody else go there. I want to know my customer. I could have grown 10 times going through a third party at a ridiculous cost, which I don't want, but leave that outside the equation. I want to know my customer directly. I want to control the experience I deliver to my customer.
Fair enough.
That's
Fair
why
enough.
I would not use a third party.
Okay. So one of the elements that has now become really important in the home delivery scenario is the actual packaging of the food. The packaging now has become the face of the establishment, or the eatery, or the service. But I find that not enough people are paying attention to it. Do you think that it is actually important, or is a generic packaging solution acceptable?
So I think that packaging is very important, and it totally it's basically, if two good things. Say if I have let's say biryani. I'm going to give that example. That's what I had over the weekend. If I have a biryani that I split up into two bits, one is packaged with something called Bees biryani, and it's got this great reputation of sophistication and something like that. And it comes in a beautiful package with a cardboard covered sleeve, and in that there's a beautiful sort of tray, plastic tray, which opens up much like an aircraft tray, and that gives me a certain impression before I even receive the box, or when I hold that box in my hand. It gives me a certain impression before I smell that food and put it into my mouth, because I'm eating with my eyes first. Even before I've seen the food, I'm seeing the packaging.
Right.
On the other hand, what I ordered over the weekend from home was a very old kalai dekchi, which is still lying in my house, which the guy will come probably in a day or two to collect. He left that dekchi in my house, and that gave me another kind of impression. Both kind of impressions were important because they were both in different kind of packagings. But packaging is important. You can deliberately choose to say, I'm going to do this. I remember a well-known caterer, whose food, Punjabi food, sort of has been well-known in Mumbai for a long time. And he started sending food in beautiful glass or crystal dishes. And looking at those dishes and, put it on the tray and it's delivered to you. And looking at those dishes, you feel it's absolutely fabulous. It gives you a certain notion of where that food is cooked, how clean it is, which can be completely misleading. Because I happen to have seen his kitchen not very far from my home, in a location where there was an open gutter. And that's the power of perception. I have never eaten his food again. He's a legendary caterer. Legendary.
Yeah. A good thing or a bad thing that your packaging hides uh, your hygiene flaws, but we'll take that as a bad thing in this particular instance. But well, Ravi, thank you so much for shedding light on this area, on it is a difficult area for a lot of entrepreneurs to get into a new space. So
so what I'm saying is that packaging is very important, Antoine. And while the idea is not to cover up your flaws.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that. But yeah, well, thank you so much for spending time and for breaking down actually all the various components that are involved with setting up your own business, with things that you need to look at and to understand before you actually take that first step and get out there into the market. Or even if you've actually gotten there, how do you build up on it? What are the things that you need to look on to take it further ahead? So thanks so much, Ravi, and thank you everyone for joining us. We will be back on Wednesday at 6 p.m. again, and this time we're going to be talking about wines and something a little more offbeat, a little more kind of tongue-in-cheek, and a little more challenging. So thank you everyone. Take care, stay safe, stay well. See you, Ravi.